I'm going to bring this to order, if those of you in the back don't mind. You guys are having way too much fun back there. All right, I'm going to call to order the Port Commission meeting for October 15th. Thank you all for waiting a week. Rob and I were out of town at a convention for Allegiant Airlines last week, so we moved everything to this week. And so I'll start with roll call. Bobby Briscoe.
Here.
Michael Shepard.
Also here.
Ken Bell is also here. I'm going to start the meeting by reading our advisory committees, and then we'll go to an open session, our comment period. Our Airport Advisory Committee, our BIAC meeting, is October 17th. That's this week at the at the Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Station, 2005 West Bakerview Road in Bellingham. Again, that's October 17th at 4 p.m. Our Marine Advisory Committee, our MAC, was canceled last month, so there'll be a lot on the agenda this month, I would imagine. November 12th at 6 p.m. And that's at the Harbor Center room that's here at the port office, and that's site. Pull down this agenda or pull down the airport website, and you'll find the Zoom link there. Now we'll go to public comment. Public comment is reserved for you to say anything to this commission that you so desire. Limited to 3 minutes if you don't mind. Would ask that any members of the audience not respond to comments being made. We'd like everybody to be heard in their truest form and not have to respond to responses from the audience. Michael?
Sign before me, though.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge you were standing. I've got a list of people. I'm going to start with Craig Henderson. Hi. Please.
Okay. I wanted to introduce myself to you. My name is Craig Henderson. I've been working on junior sailing enhancement, and I'm the guy that originally set up the 501c for the junior sailing dock, permitted the dock. As we all know, it's kind of hard work to get things permitted. And most recently permitted the launch ramp for the junior sailors and hand launch vessels such as kayaks, canoes, and small sailboats. And I've been working with Alex Hilbreth, your facilities manager, to get this rough order magnitude estimate that hopefully you guys will put this into your budget. And we also set up a GoFundMe page for this project. And I just wanted to introduce myself so you can put a face to the name, the voice. And previously I was a business owner. My company was Bullfrog Boats, and I sold that company. And so my job now is I just want to do things that can give back to the community, and the kids really do benefit. They've had that dock out there for over 10 years, and it really has enhanced the program and given a lot of kids chances to grab the tiller and control their own boat, and then eventually go on. There's been engineers and other people that have grown out of that program. So I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know about the project, and I've been working closely with Alex. So thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. If there was an interesting story about my foot, I'd tell it to you, but there isn't. So I'll get to my comments. I come to you not as a Bellingham City Council member, but as a fellow elected official who is governed by the Open Public Meetings Act here in Washington State. And I want to deliver some good news and some lessons that have been taught to me about that as you consider at your next meeting going to a 5-member commission. So the first thing to realize is that almost everybody but 3-member commissions is under this law, and we have no problems with transparency to the public. There are 281 cities, 35 counties, hundreds of special purpose boards and commissions. All of us are governed by Open Public Meeting Act, and all of us understand that we can talk with another elected official, and it's not a problem of transparency or accountability, because we also very strictly avoid talking to quorums. And we are very clear in our own minds, and our lawyers make us clear in our minds, that we're not to go around and create a meeting by just doing onesie-twosies and getting it done that way. It's very strict. But the ability to have one-on-one conversations is not only expected, it's the norm throughout Washington state. That's my other point. 3-member commissions are rare. The law governs all these governing boards and bodies, and most of them have way more than 3 members. And it applies to us very well. I think it applies oddly to a 3-member board, and you've been laboring under that restriction. It hasn't been a fatal flaw, but I think it's a flaw that doesn't need to be there. So if your concern has to do with public transparency, please know that the rest of us are elected officials and we're committed to transparency and we follow the law, and it works for us if we have more than 3 members on elected governing board. So I wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Dan?
Good afternoon. Dan Tucker, Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. I just wanted to remind the Commission something that came up in discussions with staff earlier today as we were going about other business, to remind you all of the Maritime Washington National Heritage Area and encourage you to consider membership with the Heritage Area. It's a coastal designation of 3,000 miles spanning from Oregon up to BC border, and the Working Waterfront Coalition, the Working Waterfront Foundation, which is going to present on the apprenticeship program today, is a member, as well as several other organizations and businesses in town. So I just wanted to put out a friendly reminder that I would love for the Port of Bellingham to be a member of that Maritime Washington National Heritage Area. I think you guys would be a great addition to their roster. Thank you.
Just a note on that. I guess we'll get this to other business. Anyone online wishing to speak to the commission? Is there anyone online? Just raise your hand and we will connect you. Nope, no one else in the room? Okay, we will close the public public comment section of this meeting. It's coffee, trust me, cold brew, Rome, coffee. And then, Bobby, you had something you wanted to announce at the beginning?
Yeah, we lost a member of Whatcom County, Andy Vidlick. It's about 2 weeks ago. Real icon in this county and the West Coast, really. All the way from San Francisco to Alaska. Andy passed, it was almost 2 weeks ago, I think. Now, we had a funeral today, hence why I'm dressed this way. But if we could take a moment for Andy, he was one of the food bank in Whatcom County. He donated annually around 100,000 pounds of salmon fillets a year, plus numerous things he did. He wanted to do. He's really a great person, was a great asset to everyone in this county, and it was a great loss for us when he passed. And he was 92, going to turn 92 today, and he was on his way to a meeting when they found him in the shower. So he worked right up until he moved on to God's house. So if we could take a minute, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move from the old to the new. We have a new hire introduction. Kurt, you want to?
Good afternoon, Kurt Baumgarten, Port of Bellingham Environmental Planner. And I wanted to introduce Emma Van Orso. Emma will be with us for the next 11 months as a Civic Spark Fellow. It's an AmeriCorps program that we're lucky enough to participate in. She'll be working on a port-wide resilience plan framework that will look at natural hazards mitigation and also bring in our climate change work. And she's a recent graduate of Western in business and sustainability degree. So welcome, Emma.
Welcome to the port. Okay, that being said, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
All right, motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Shepard? Anything you want to pull out?
Just reviewing again. Nope, I think I'm all good. Thank you.
Mr. Briscoe?
No, I'm good.
And I am good.
All right. Motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Also, yes.
And Commissioner Bell is a yes. All right, move on to presentations. Federal affairs. I don't know that that's worded properly, but
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator. Today it's my honor to welcome Joel Rubin and David Hodges to give a presentation. We came to you back in February and with a recommendation to hire a federal affairs team for a couple reasons. One was just the unprecedented amount of federal money that had been made available through the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. The other was the increasing complexity of the grants and appropriations bills. And then the most important probably was the return of earmarks. And since we've brought them on board, I think we've been successful by any measure. Of course, you know about the RAISE grant, the $17.8 million RAISE grant to reconnect rail for our shipping terminal. We also have money in the federal budget for the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Stormwater Project, $1.5 million and $3.2 million to support the start of our international arrivals terminal out at Bellingham International Airport. So it's my honor to welcome. Carrie, do I do that, or is that?
Oh, well, you can introduce them, and then they're going to share.
Oh, here we go. We've got them on the screen. At any rate, yeah, and just a quick note, I have to mention when we applied for our RAISE grant, we also had, over 13 or 14 other people that submitted letters of support. So it was a community-wide effort, but David and Joel were an important part of that team. So with that, I'll turn it over to them to introduce themselves and give a brief introduction to the federal landscape.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And hopefully everybody can hear me and see my screen. I'm not hearing any objections, so I'll go ahead and assume that is the case. So I'm David Hodges. This is the first time we've had to be in front of you all, so appreciate the opportunity. Just thought I'd introduce myself really quick. Again, David Hodges, I'm a partner at CFM Advocates. I lead up the team that manages your federal affairs and federal lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. As Mike mentioned, we've been doing this for about 8 months for you all. I have been a federal lobbyist for the past 6 years. And prior to that, I served on the staff of U.S. Senator Patty Murray before moving over to the lobbying and advocacy side of things. We are very much a Pacific Northwest lobbying firm. I actually still live in the state. I am sort of an anomaly. I'm a lobbyist that travels out to DC pretty frequently, but I live in Vancouver. And to be clear, that's America's Vancouver, not the one just north of you there. And yeah, again, Pacific Northwest lobbying firm that specializes in representing municipal governments. About 80 to 90% of our clients actually fall into the local government bucket, either ports, cities, counties, special purpose districts, et cetera. And I'm going to let Joel Rubin, my colleague, introduce himself really quick.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this evening. Joel Rubin, I'm based here in Washington, D.C. Been doing federal affairs work for about 20 plus years now. And it's just really been a pleasure working with you and your team. Rob and Mike have just been outstanding. And I think the results that Mike mentioned in our introduction really showed that we hit the ground running, and we just really appreciate the great partnership that we've had so far. And part of the presentation tonight is to talk through some of those successes, but also look forward to the opportunities coming up in 25 and the future.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, so going to talk about your successes, get into a DC update, and talk about your draft 2025 agenda, which we're working through. So Mike stole my thunder a little bit here on some of the stuff we've worked on with you for the last 8 months or so. So you'll notice a lot of these are yellow highlighted. These dollar figures, they are not final yet. They are pending. That is because Congress has not passed an FY25 appropriations bill just yet. So all of these are contained within the FY25 appropriations proposals. The fiscal year started on October 1st. Congress did not complete the appropriations process before then, so we're operating on a continuing resolution until December 20th. So I expect and feel confident that a lot of this will come through here at the end of this year. So first up is congressionally directed spending. So these are the new name for earmarks, which disappeared for 10 years and have been back for the last 3 or 4 years now. And it's an opportunity for us to apply directly to your members of Congress for them to insert a line item into the appropriations bill for a particular project that's a priority for you and a priority for them. So, we've had a lot of success on that front. Typically, entities are lucky to get one of these a year. Oftentimes, they don't get any. This year, we have 2 pending for you. So as Mike alluded to, the International Arrivals Terminal, Senator Murray included $3.2 million in the Senate appropriations bill for that. And then Senator Cantwell also was helpful in getting $1.5 million for the Fairhaven stormwater improvements there to help with sea level rise and storm surge challenges on that property. So $4.7 million pending in the FY25 appropriations package. You're in a really good position again to hopefully get those finalized in December. And we're going to be lobbying for that up through the end of this year, and as soon as Congress gets back right after the election. Mike talked about this too, your $17.9 million raise grant. Very exciting to see that. These are very competitive grants. They only have about a 10% award rate. What we advise our clients to do, and this is what you ultimately did as well, not only did you apply for RAISE, but we applied for the PIDP program, that's Support Infrastructure Development Program, and the CRISI program, which is through the Federal Rail Administration to help with rail projects. We applied for all 3, knowing that we, could potentially get one. We did get the RAISE grant, which we were very excited about. These are very competitive applications. Again, only about a 10% award rate. They are 30-plus page applications. They require a benefit cost analysis. So just a lot of work for the ports team over there, and us doing that. Very exciting to see the fruits of our labor there, and $17.9 million coming your way for the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. The last item on there, policy items, I'm calling it. So TSA's law enforcement program is referred to as LEO. This was a little surprise we got about a month after we started lobbying for you all. And Congress passed the FY24 appropriations bill in March of this year. And everybody was surprised to see that they went ahead and zeroed out the LEO program. So this is a reimbursement program for airport operators that provide law enforcement services. So I think nationwide it's about $50 billion, but for you all, it's $100,000 a year that reimburses you for providing a local law enforcement officer at BLI. That was zeroed out, unfortunately. We ended up working with Congressman Larson to get him to submit what's called a programmatic request to the Appropriations Committee in the House to restore this funding. So the House proposal version of the appropriations bill includes LEO funding, which has been restored. Unfortunately, the Senate version does not. So that's something this year, towards the end of this year, when they return, we're going to be working, as they're conferencing the House and Senate to hopefully get the House version of this funding included in the final appropriations bill. So more to come on that. We are really proud of what we've done in just 8 months here. We always tell our clients that our goal is to provide immediate value, of course, in your government affairs operations. But also our goal is to help you with federal funding and hopefully pay for ourselves in a way. So if you look at, the amount of funding we have here, if that were all to come through, next to our retainer, it's a 251-to-1 return on investment. So we're excited about that. A lot of success for Port of Bellingham in just the last 8 months. And obviously, we want to continue to build on that into the future. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Joel to go ahead and just kind of provide the politics of what's going on right now across the country.
Well, that's easy. Trying to predict the future in politics is never fun. So David gave me that responsibility this evening. Just a real quick look at what we're faced with. Obviously, the election is coming up in November. The House and the Senate and the presidency are all up for grabs. We are basically a 50-50 country. Right now, we have a 4-seat majority in the House of Representatives that the Republicans control. We have a 1-seat majority in the Senate that the Democrats control. So looking at the election, everyone's wondering what's going to happen with the House and the Senate. These are two graphs that we took from 270 to win, copied and pasted on here to show you just basically the dynamics that the House and the Senate are looking at going into the November election. What we are seeing in the House is basically a toss-up, and you might be hearing that word a lot whenever you're reading the papers or watching the news about the elections. The House is just razor thin margin in terms of what's going to happen. Like I said, there's only a 4 or 5 seat majority for Republicans in the House right now. My guess is whatever happens at the presidential level will have a factor on who controls the House of Representatives. So if Trump wins the presidency, it's probably more likely than not that the House goes Republican. But if Harris wins, then the Democrats will likely pick up the House. But it's really anyone's call at this point. When it comes to the Senate, it's a little bit more clear today. I don't want to go too far out in front of the polls, and we still do have 3 weeks to go, which is a lifetime. But Republicans are feeling pretty good about picking up the Senate. With Joe Manchin leaving, not running again in West Virginia, that's already a pretty solid red pickup for Republicans, that takes the Senate automatically to 50-50. And then Montana, where Senator Tester, who's a Democrat, has represented Montana for a while, is in a lot of trouble with polling. He's down in many polls in upper single digits to potentially double-digit polling. And President Trump is looking really good in Montana. So it's going to be really difficult for Democrats to keep Montana as a Senate seat. So between West Virginia and Montana, it really looks like Republicans could take over the Senate, but you have to have a number of other pickup opportunities for Republicans as well in Ohio, Nevada, Arizona, and potentially New Hampshire. But Montana and West Virginia are probably the two most likely pickups for Republicans, and they're feeling pretty good about their chances in the Senate. And then on the presidential race, again, it's neck and neck right now. I'll just say that President Trump is polling better today than he had in 2016 at this time or 2020. He's within 2 to 3 points, which is better than nationally, which is better than a better situation than he was back in 2016 or 2020. But again, we still have 3 more weeks to go, and that's an eternity, especially in presidential politics. But everyone knows the battleground states there: Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. It's all going to come down to those 7 states. And all of the polling has it within the margin of error in each of those states. So we're going to be watching closely to what the outcome is on all of these races with the presidential, Senate, and the House. But ultimately, you all remain in a good position to be successful at the federal level. And I'll skip ahead here. David put the slide up here. The election impact on your congressional delegation. You all are blessed in the Pacific Northwest and in your district to have Senator Murray as the current chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, one of the most senior positions here in Congress. Senator Cantwell is chair of the Commerce Committee, which is one of the most senior positions in the Senate. And Congressman Larson is the ranking member on the Transportation Committee, the lead Democrat on the Transportation Committee. So if Democrats do take over the House, he is in line to be chairman of the Transportation Committee. When they're rewriting the infrastructure law, the Transportation Reauthorization Bill, that can be very beneficial to the port. Then I'll go back up to the top in terms of what we're looking at in a lame duck session. That's the period between the election and the end of the year. This year, we have to pass, as David alluded to, those FY25 appropriations bills. This is basically the budget for the federal government that is on hold. That should have been passed by October 1st, but never is. But they'll finish that up, hopefully, in the lame duck. And that bill includes your 2 congressionally directed spending projects. The WRDA bill, the Water Resources Development Act, is very important to ports in the Pacific Northwest and across the country, where you do a lot of dredging and flood control and water management projects. So that bill has been drafted, passed in the House and Senate, and we're hoping that is finalized in the lame duck session. And then the Farm Bill is pending as well. There's a bill that's passed the House. It has not moved in the Senate yet, but there's a chance that a farm bill could move in the lame duck. Looking forward quickly to 2025, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that President Trump and the Congress passed in 2017. Many of those tax cut provisions are expiring in 2025, so Congress is going to be focused on trying to extend those or modify the tax code next year. We always run into a debt ceiling increase, basically the nation's credit card. You need to increase the debt limit on the credit card every couple of years. That will be happening around the summer of 2025. And there's budget caps that are associated with that might be tied along with that in terms of restricting some spending. So there's going to be a busy lame duck and a very active 2025. These are just some of the issues that are going to be of interest to the port, but they're higher level issues that we're going to be working on back here in Washington, D.C. as well. So I'll turn it back to David.
Thanks, Joel. So I alluded to this before, we're wrapping up your 2024 work, but also simultaneously getting ready for 2025. So I've been working with Mike and the port team over there to hone your 2025 agenda, to get ready here for January. Anticipate having this wrapped up in the next couple of months here, but just to give you a preview of what we're anticipating will be on the agenda. So again, we're going to continue to talk about the Bellingham International Airport. We got that earmark from Senator Murray that's pending. We're hoping for more funding on that, looking at next year. And then other projects that related to the BLI or to BLI, the runway rehabilitation project. That's FAA funding, making sure that that is adequately funded so that isn't delayed. And then similarly, the airport control tower as well. Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, again, more stormwater needs there. We got a bit of a down payment from Senator Cantwell to get that rolling for federal funding. Probably going to be asking for more on that front next year as well. Understand that there's a lot of stormwater needs there. New to the agenda for this year is the Blaine Harbor Marine Industrial Area. Again, that's, looking at some stormwater improvements there, and then dock and bulkhead repair and or replacement. So, flushing out exactly what our ask is going to be for federal funding on that front, but anticipate doing that here in the next couple of months. Policy-wise,
David,
yep.
I would also say we're going to continue to scour for money for the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. Just the other day, David sent me a list of other ports that had gotten money through programs, and we were looking at potential opportunities at the shipping terminal, so that we continue to be a focus.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I definitely want to try to, see if we can shake some more money out of the federal tree there for the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. And then on the policy front, ESA Section 7 maintenance, without getting too much into the weeds on this, it's basically an interpretation that the Corps and NOAA Fisheries is using for environmental baseline interpretation. It increases costs for maintenance projects and delays it. And, that's something that ports across the state and across the region are dealing with. We're coordinating with the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, PNWA, to make our voices heard on that. It's hugely problematic, and anticipate that's going to be a major issue next year as well. TSA worker screening program, this is basically TSA trying to take what is their responsibility and shove it onto airport operators to screen, physical screening of aviation workers. There's a cost associated with that for you all. So pushing back against that. I mentioned the LEO reimbursement program. Even if we get funding restored this year, I anticipate it's going to continue to be on the potential chopping block in future years. So we're going to want to continue to talk about that too. And then passenger facility charges, that is capped at $4.50. That has been the case since 2001, so it's been over 20 years. It has never increased, and obviously the cost of everything has gone up in those 20 years. So continuing to harp on the need to lift that cap, and that's something we'll continue to talk about as well. Those were the quick hits for you all. I know we threw a lot at you, but wanted to open it up to questions if you have any. And of course, happy to follow up too later if I want to be conscious of your time.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. There's a lot to download with that. I got a couple questions, but Bobby, let's start.
No, I'm good. I'm still processing what they said, and I'm adding it up here, but it all sounded good, and I hope that we can find the monies to put the Port of Bellingham back together so that people can fully utilize what we have here. And I appreciate your work on that. And any monies you see lurking around in the corners somewhere that you think might be due us, well, we would appreciate a heads up on it.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, just back to the previous slide, you mentioned the TSA screening. Did I hear correctly that that's just a screening program for TSA workers, or is it the actual screening of baggage that TSA workers perform at our facilities?
It's screening of your airport employees is our understanding of that, yes. Not of the TSA workers themselves.
But it's all airport employees, so not just Port of Bellingham employees. So Scotty B's employees, Halibut Henry's employees, Alaska Air employees, all airport employees. So it's a new program where we screen them as they come to work. And we're just looking for funding to help cover that screening process.
And it's something TSA, should
so
be.
you would think they would go through the TSA security checkpoint, but instead they're saying, no, airports are responsible to provide, a whole separate screening system so that they can go in the back end of the airport.
And that's a federal requirement.
It's a new national amendment that took place in mid-September. So it's been going on about a month now, and we are currently paying 100% of that program, just looking for some assistance from the federal government.
And my hope is, gentlemen, that you've got a number of people pushing back on that. Is that true?
Yeah, it's definitely not just you guys. I mean, that's something
airport
every airport
here.
across the country is being impacted by.
Yeah. And are most of them pushing back on that requirement?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for some, they're more set up. I think SeaTac, it's not necessarily as much of an issue for them, but small and regional airports, definitely so.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Is that all yet? My first comment is, way to come out of the gate, you guys. You came out, you came out strong. I would love to have every contract I have with the results that you had within months of signing up. So kudos. I appreciate your work.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
And we
more
appreciate,
to build on, I hope. So.
Yeah, we appreciate the benefits that are coming from that. I want to drill down a little bit on the control tower. And if you could kind of describe for us where that sits in the program. Are we still in the queue? What kind of dollars are we looking at?
So
yeah, that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Was Mike going to say something or?
Oh, I was going to say it's my understanding that money's been appropriated for new control towers, one at Bellingham, but it's been given to it's in the FAA, but it hasn't been under contract. So I think where CFM, David, and Joel will be watching that money like a hawk to make sure it goes to us as it was intended, so that we get it under contract. So I think it's still a year or two out before we see the money, but. Yeah, we've been listed as one of the airports designated for that new airport control tower, which will be a big improvement.
Definitely.
And one of the other things we're going to be working hard to get is radar at the in the new control tower. As you know, we have some safety limitations in our existing tower, so we'll be working that issue pretty hard too.
Are we under Vancouver's radar? We use their radar system now, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And this would give us our own.
We don't really have radar, so we're not using Vancouver's radar, but our pilots check in with Vancouver to be.
Well, that's,
yeah.
that's what I mean.
Okay.
They kind of watch everything that's going on around us.
Correct.
And I've used this analogy ad nauseum, so I apologize to everyone in the room who's heard this a dozen times, but that control tower, I own a 1952 Chevy pickup. It has a more advanced electronic system than that control tower.
Yeah.
So please help us with that. Thank you.
And that's the type of story we want to be telling about that, Commissioner. Yeah.
We might be taking that truck to DC.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
If you need replacement fuses for the tower, just call me. So, no, just thank you so much for the work that you've done. You've already provided us a tremendous amount of benefit, and we look forward to having more projects in your bucket.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Sounds good, thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm going to read the motion.
Please.
Okay. Motion to authorize the executive director to execute a PSA with CFM Advocates to provide state lobbying consultant services.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, as you know, for the past 10 years or so, we've used McBride Associates on a interlocal with the city and county. Last fall, the county specifically expressed interest in going a different route with a different lobbyist. They had strong needs for behavioral health, and so they wanted a lobbyist that focused more on behavioral health. And so we took steps to make sure we still have that partnership and shared objectives. That's been really effective, but we took it as an opportunity to go out and hit the street with proposals for the state and do some interviews and see who was out there. And we were pleased to see that McBride applied again. We had 3 applicants, but also CFM is expanding their state presence. And so we interviewed them, and it was a really difficult decision, honestly, but we had unanimous choice for CFM for a couple reasons. One is they've been highly effective as our federal lobbyists. 2, they were the lowest cost, and we saw some real benefit to coordinating our federal and state requests for capital budget items. And so it would be our recommendation to move forward with CFM for the state lobbying consultant services.
Any comments?
I guess I just have a concern. I know when we go to Olympia and we do lobbying, our delegation really, every time we're there, they always comment on how much they like having a common platform that comes from the port, the county, and the city of Bellingham. They really appreciate that, and it's something that I think is a real strong point for our lobbying efforts. That has partially been facilitated by a common lobbying firm that supported all 3 of us. How are we able to continue to achieve that going forward?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to meet with my counterparts at the county and the city early next month to talk about kind of shared legislative objectives. It's our intent to continue to regularly meet to have kind of that broad umbrella to possibly do joint meetings. I think just having those relationships, taking the opportunity to lobby, not just as the Port of Bellingham or with Washington Public Ports Association, but also going in with the city and county when appropriate on certain issues, especially related to economic development, will be really effective. So I too appreciate that you see the value of that. We really do see the value in that and look to keep that as one of our strategies moving forward, and then we'll see how it goes. We'll go through a couple sessions, and right now I feel like we have really strong relationships with all of our state delegation. and in part because of that joint lobbying effort. So we'll just keep a close eye on it, and if we lose any traction, you know, we go back to that shared legislative approach.
Do we have an idea, are all three of us going to be represented by different firms?
Correct, yeah, yep. Yeah, the county, yeah.
You know,
And as I mentioned, the county was really interested in having a lobbyist with more specialized in behavioral health and those types of services that they are really inundated with now.
and the city has also chosen a different?
Correct, yeah.
The city and the county don't have the same?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I can definitely see efficiency for us in having the same folks at the federal level and the state level helping to move our projects forward. That shared agenda, I think, is important for us to keep our eye on.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, so the city and the county have much different interests than we do. It seems that it may be better for all three to do what we're doing when we can be specific with our guys in the areas we want to be at, and they're in their areas. I gather the shared thing between the three of us, but it seems like to me that the waters might get a little bit muddled when you've got three different entities in a room that want different things with the same group of people, and somebody's going to run out of time on one of the things they want. So,
Yeah, I think it's there. You could definitely look at it both ways, right? Having a lobbyist is just focus on our specific agenda. It definitely has some advantages, you know, to looking out for, you know, a lot of different things. So,
and I also see the advantage to having everybody together on the same page is more powerful. I get that. But also, you know, I mean, and I think there's probably going to be times when we're all going to be on that page, whether we have our own individual lobbyists or not, I would think. And I would think that would be coordinated amongst the lobbyists as well as ourselves. So I don't think we're going to lose anything here. I feel like we're going to gain some things.
yeah, and I look at it as honestly an opportunity. You know, it's you know, when we go back, we can meet with individually as the Port of Bellingham, we can meet with the Washington Public Ports Association, but then we can also meet jointly with the city and county folks. So just have one more opportunity to interface with both the 40th and 42nd, but other legislators as well, so.
And I assume it's the staff's decision that this is the best route to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I think that's all I have.
They took care of my concerns, so, and these gentlemen certainly proved themselves. Well, I am going to miss not having Ben to pick on, just to say, but David, you're in the queue, so hang tight. Otherwise, I've got nothing. Carrie?
Carrie,
Thanks,
if you
Rita.
please.
Right. Authorize the executive director to execute a PSA with CFM Advocates to provide state lobbying consultant services.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bell is a yes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, something I'm looking forward to. All-American Marine. Ron?
Right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's nice to be here. My name is Ron Willey. I'm the president of All-American Marine, just down the street. And what I'd like to do is just provide an update to y'all on what's going on at All-American. Kind of want to start out by highlighting a couple of things that are happening at our shop and some developments, and sharing a little bit with a short video that's highlighting special features of the vessels that we build. Most notably the hydrofoil-equipped nature of those boats. As you all know, we've started here in Bellingham in '87 and have been working for 25 years with Technocraft Design based out of Auckland, New Zealand. So this video will go into that just for a couple of minutes and probably do a better job than I would rambling on. So let me get that up and queued for you.
I'm Ron Willey. I'm the president and COO of All American Marine. We specialize in building state-of-the-art aluminum catamarans and monohulls for a variety of missions throughout North America. The company started in 1987. In 1999, we entered into an exclusive agreement with Technocraft Design. Our close relationship with Technocraft has benefited our building process and, most importantly, benefited our operators.
Having worked with All American for such a long time, we know the people, we know their systems, we know the details should be. Our drawings and models are prepared specifically to suit the way that All American people work in their shop. So there's so much consistency from vessel to vessel to vessel. You know, when we originally set out to create the hull, it all started when we were commissioned to design a boat to operate in open seas, in rough weather at 30 knots, but yet have very good seakeeping. We knew at the time, if you want to design a boat that goes fast, you need nice V-type bottom with planing surfaces that create a lot of dynamic lift. With the priority having been seakeeping, we decided to create a hull that is a combination of a round bulge and vertical surfaces. So we ended up with a catamaran demi-hull with an outboard side, which is a round bulge, which is fantastic for seakeeping. To reduce the drag of the hull, we've created large chines on the inside and the outside of the demi-hull. The purpose of these chines is to keel away the green water as it gets up to speed, and thereby keeping the area above the chine, which is basically at the waterline level, semi-dry, just spray, no solid water. By doing that, we reduce the wetted area, which in turn reduces the drag. You know, it's a very good seakeeping type hull. 10 or 20 years later, we started working with creating the hydrofoil system that works on commercial craft. You know, for commercial, you need something that's reliable, it's always going to work. A hydrofoil is practically the same as an aerofoil, which is used as a wing on a plane. It's an aerofoil shape which creates lift. So the faster you go, the more vertical lift it creates, same as an airplane. And therefore, by lifting part of the hull out of the water, we reduce the wetted area and therefore the drag. We've been using a lot of computational fluid dynamics and other software to develop these systems. We then also developed a dynamic system, which means we can now have adjustability on the foil, and in particular, the angle of attack. And the higher the angle of attack, the more lift it produces. Whatever the conditions, you can fine-tune the foil to just give you that amount of lift that gives you the lowest fuel consumption at that speed.
Being able to build custom vessels that are specifically suited and deployed to accomplish our customers' missions is really important to us. In every relationship that we build, we want to maintain a really great win-win scenario. We want to make sure that not only does our boat deploy well, but the boat continues to be effective over its life cycle. And we're happy to be able to assist people not just get a boat, but also maintain and keep a boat and keep it operational for years to come.
I'd like to show that because it's so concise. We just put that together this year, and it does provide a much better, visual interpretation of what the hydrofoils do on the boat, and also gives you an introduction to Nick DeWall, who we worked with for 25 years at All American and based out of New Zealand there. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the past, the present, and future projects at All American and things that are happening right down the street. One of the things that have been recent to us is we were successful with a MARAD grant this year, small shipyard grant program, and we were able to actually acquire several key pieces of equipment. We had a 30 by 8 foot router table, aluminum router cutter table that was in use for about 20 years. That was replaced with 2 new tables of that same size. So when we're doing projects like our hydrofoils, we're actually able to do those hydrofoils on that table and cut other material at the same time, really impacting our overall efficiency that way. We also were able to obtain a 550-ton CNC press brake as part of that grant. So we got $916,000 grant from MARAD for that, and we had about a 40% match on top of that All American provided for that equipment. It's been very effective so far this year, and it's been great getting into service and really increased our efficiency. A couple of the past projects the last few years you may have seen on the water here. We delivered a couple of boats during COVID for major marine tours up in Alaska. Those are deployed and working very successfully up in Seward, Alaska. Also, right after the second one on those boats, we had the Swiftsure delivered down here to Edmonds for the Hankey family of Puget Sound Express tours. Those are all fast boats operating with hydrofoils. They all had, the last two boats had adjustable hydrofoils like Nick alluded to in the video, and cruising at speeds like this one at 34 plus knots on the water. We kind of segued from those boats into a survey boat that was highlighted on the video. And this is kind of interesting because this is a hydrographic survey boat that was deployed to the East Coast based out of North Carolina. And this is doing advanced work now for the wind farm industry out there, being able to do a single pass survey when they go through and mow the lawn, they call it, in different areas, and collect all the data. Interestingly, they collect enough data in one day. It takes them 3 days to process it. It's just a vast amount of data with actual server racks on the boat in order to collect all the information that way. This is also a fixed foil boat that would help them when they're cruising out to the survey grounds and do so quickly. We got through a couple of boats for NOAA, smaller ones, one here for the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. They're both 50-footers. Storm Petrel went out here, and then the Gannet was actually delivered to the East Coast to the Grays Reef National Marine Sanctuary. Everyone heard about the problems in the Panama Canal and no water. We were fortunate to participate in that. Our boat got down to the Panama Canal, and they decided to take it all the way around the Cape. So it took another month to actually get to Florida, believe it or not. They went through the Straits of Magellan with that vessel. Earlier this year, we delivered the Chugach Express up to Whittier to Phillips Tours. And this is another fast boat cruising at 32 to 34 knots with 150 passengers on board. Those folks have been very tickled with that boat, and it was very, very successful for their season there this year. A couple of weeks ago, you probably saw the Barracuda. It was out here in the harbor, and that boat headed down to California. In fact, next week they're having a christening ceremony down there for that, and we hope to build a few more boats for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Kind of gets us into what we're doing right now in our shop. We actually have a 73-foot research vessel that's going to also go down to California for Cal Poly Humboldt. This boat will be done and launched after the first of the year. This is going to be one of the first boats in the country to be equipped with not just an EPA Tier 4 system with a SCR on board, but it also has a diesel particulate filter in order to meet the more stringent requirements that California has recently enacted. I think it's probably the first or second boat that's going to go down there with that kind of equipment on board. We're also building right now inside our shop a 108-foot monohull. This vessel is slated to be a parallel hybrid monohull. We went from rarely seeing work to California to seeing a whole bunch of it in short order. And this boat is under construction right now. We're welding out the hull, and it'll get rolled over towards the end of this month. Next projects on our queue, kind of moving towards the future, will be another 73-foot research vessel for the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. That will get shipped all the way across on a lift ship out of Victoria and go through the Panama Canal as well. Hopefully not around this time. And that'll be followed by a 60-foot hybrid vessel that's going to be deployed for Orange County, California. This boat, they want to be able to operate about 30% of the time on batteries only. So this boat will have engines and batteries, but it should be able to operate 30% of the time on just batteries, doing all the water sampling and research that they do offshore in Orange County. Also down in California, we've got a patrol boat that we'll start building the later part of next year. 65-footer. We delivered one boat down to the LA Port Police, and this will be the second vessel for those folks. Followed by another research vessel. We're very keen on the research boats, and the research crowd is very keen on All-American Marine. So this one's going to go down to the University of Texas, and it'll be delivered a bit later. We've got a few of those projects on the queue in front of this one, but just gives you an idea as to the backlog that All-American Marine's starting to build at our facility. And I mentioned the Chugach Express. These folks were so happy with the boat when it showed up in May. By July, they signed a contract for a second one. So that one's also on our queue and will be going up to Whittier, Alaska. This boat's right now slated to be delivered probably in the early 2027. So it's very exciting times that way. We've got a lot of vessels to build. I just wanted to kind of take a couple minutes to spend it with you all to kind of show you what we've been up to, what we're doing, and kind of where we're going. At this point in time, our main focus moving into 2025, frankly, is recruiting. We are out there looking for more and more employees. We've got a good amount of work. It's kind of like the post-COVID dam is finally broken, and we're seeing a lot of orders roll through. So at this stage in game, we're really looking at expanding our business, and unfortunately enough, the facility that we have is capable of a lot of work, and so we're trying our best to continue to fill it and have some more employees here on the ground here in Bellingham. So if there's any questions that anyone might have, I'd be happy to answer those. Mr. Briscoe.
Yeah, great. I think, the vessels are great. One of the first questions I was going to ask was the foil underneath, but you answered that. I do have a question in light of our hurricanes we've had, or we haven't had, but Florida's had, and the rise in the awareness of the ion battery and saltwater problem, with cars semi-exploding or catching fire after the water is receded. The hybrid vessels, do they have the ion batteries in them?
Yeah, they have lithium-ion batteries. There are different chemistries that go into different ones. The boats that we're building, primarily, the Orange County Sanitation is built to Coast Guard standards, but not certified. The other vessels are certified for the Coast Guard, so they have a very stringent set of requirements that we have to meet on those. Some of the batteries that we're looking at right now and using, like for the Orange County and for the hybrid monohull for Harbor Breeze cruises, are actually IP67 rated batteries. So they're basically an enclosed waterproof battery on top of all of the other Coast Guard requirements. So those batteries, you might see them on buses, literally on the roof of the buses, exposed to the elements that way. When it comes to lithium-ion batteries, the Coast Guard does have very stringent requirements on safety. There are a number of different features that we're going to be required to put into effect on vessels like that, including constant spray mist and fogging or flooding of certain compartments if they were to have a fire. The other thing is the battery manufacturers, they're in the business to make batteries, not to have bad things happen with them. So each one of the manufacturers that we deal with actually has a battery management unit on their system, and that unit monitors those batteries down to the individual cell levels. So they basically are able to shut things off if they spot an anomaly in an individual cell, let alone a pack. And so if there's ever a problem with the cell, the idea is to shut it down so it doesn't propagate to the pack.
Okay. What happens if the vessel sinks?
If it sinks? We haven't had that problem yet.
I know.
So.
I'm just saying, do they know what happens with the battery? If it was, and I'm not trying to create issues.
Sure.
I'm just curious. I'm sure all this stuff is being thought about, but if the battery is immersed in salt water, and what happens?
Yeah, like I say, the ones that we're looking at now has that IP67 rating, and they're sealed.
They're sealed, so
they're
water
sealed,
couldn't penetrate.
They're not meant to have any water egress on them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And as far as the rest of it, that's one of the strategies to prevent, any kind of fire from propagating is actually to flood it.
Right.
So it wouldn't cause any fires at any rate.
Okay.
It would be able to actually stop the spread of the fire. When those things do occur, it'll keep going underwater basically if you had one like that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, just curious what was going on in that part of that. We talk about the hybrids, but we never talk about.
Sure.
What are we using for batteries? Are they different type batteries in a car? Or, most people don't, and myself, I didn't know which ones they were using.
Yeah, and they are different packs than would be in a car. And as you might imagine, with boats like ours, where we have like 150 people, or in the case of the Harbor Breeze cruise, that's 350 people on board. The Coast Guard is very stringent on those, and so we've got a fair bit of experience on putting some of those on board on 3 of the other vessels that we've built so far, and all of that technology continues to improve.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah. You guys are making so many great boats. I wish you could help out the Washington State Ferries with their problems.
That would be nice. We're not quite that big. If they would have been a bunch of small boats, we certainly could help them. We've got boats down there at King County, carry 200 people and move those around. And Well, I think the last time they were looking at those state ferries, the last go around, I reckon we could have built about 20 of those to fly them all around Puget Sound in order to do that, but you couldn't fit any cars on them.
Yeah. All right, a couple questions. Tell us a little bit I know you guys built a hydrogen-powered vessel recently. Tell us a little bit about that, and do you expect to have more of those in the future?
Sure. We built and successfully deployed the Sea Change down to San Francisco. It's in use down there. The San Francisco Bay Ferry, or WETA, the Water Emergency Transportation Authority, is actually running trips on that on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays up and down the promenade. And so that's been fairly successful that way. It is the first of its kind. There is some more interest on that. You know, to be honest, I think a lot of folks are kind of like wait and see. How is that going to go? How's hydrogen market going to mature? What will that look like? But it was exceedingly interesting, not just for us to get the job done, but to actually see and be on board that vessel when it's operating. And literally all you get out of the back of it is a little bit of steamy hot air. You know, so you put hydrogen in, it goes through a fuel cell. The fuel cell makes the electricity, and the electricity goes to the electric propulsion motors that drive the propellers. It's very interesting technology. I will say some of the advancements that may interest you. It's my understanding that the fuel cell racks that we had on that boat, if you were to put one of the fuel cells in place of one that's on that boat now, since we've been building and deploying that boat, those fuel cells have roughly 3 times the amount of power that the ones the Sea Change currently have on there now. So the fuel cell market is advancing fairly rapidly and able to produce more energy in a smaller package. For us and for a lot of folks in the industry, I think the biggest challenge isn't the electrical side and the fuel cell side. It's actually the storage of the hydrogen, having enough space to store that kind of product. Hydrogen has a lot of energy density, but in the Sea Change, it was put on in a gaseous form, and so that boat carries about 246 kilograms of hydrogen on board. And a kilogram of hydrogen, roughly speaking, has about the same energy as a gallon of diesel. So you've got a 70-foot boat that has about 240 gallons of diesel equivalent power on board. It's enough to move it around for a few days, but they do have to refuel fairly frequently. And that's also, going back to safety, kind of a limiting factor on there, because we were using tanks that we knew would be approved by the Coast Guard. They were DOT stamped and inspected tanks. So it limited how big they could be and how many we could put on board. So I think the technology is going to continue to advance. I think there's got some real positive things to come on that. And interestingly enough, All-American participated in Sea Feast just a couple of weeks ago, where we gave tours to the public of our facility. We had about 150 people come through, and I led one of the tours and was pulled aside from one of the gentlemen who's down at PACCAR doing fuel cell development down there. So we had a nice long talk about hydrogen and trying to get that more to our area as well. So very, very interesting developments on both batteries and hydrogen as we move into the future.
Very good. Can I ask a follow-up? What's the conversion of miles per kilogram versus miles per gallon on a gallon, since the energy equivalent's about the same?
Yeah, the energy equivalent is pretty darn close. The fuel cells are getting better, and so I'd say it's pretty close. It may actually be possibly a bit better. One of the things, Mr. Bell, is that when you're dealing with electricity, you know, you're generating sometimes going from DC to AC. So like the traction motors we have on board the boat were AC motors, but the actual battery system and some of the deployment was on the DC side. So you do have some conversion losses going from DC to AC and then back again. So that can impact the overall performance of it, but it's pretty good.
And what about weight conversions? Can you put as many kilograms of hydrogen on it as you could gallons? Will you get the same distance out of
You get the same for that. The storage of it is the tricky part. The
So
tanks
hydrogen
weigh. There's like in our example, there were more tanks and they were heavier to do the same job. And so that's why I say the energy density side of things, whether it's battery or hydrogen, it's really about how do you store the energy. You know, you look at modern lithium batteries and you know, equivalent weight, they're probably 50 times as much as a gallon of diesel. Hydrogen's a little bit better, but the tank size and being able to store hydrogen in those tanks is the tricky bit right now. Certainly they do that in liquid form. We don't feel like the Coast Guard is quite there yet to approve liquid hydrogen. It may take a little bit more work. I think it's something that they'll get to, but it may take a little bit longer.
Okay, back to you. As you probably know, we're working on a plan to redevelop the ASB lagoon for a marine trades expansion area. I'm sure our staff has already connected with you. Do you have any thoughts on needs or opportunities related to that project from your point of view? We want to just make sure that as we redevelop that it's really meeting the needs of our important tenants like you guys' organization.
Absolutely, I really appreciate that. In fact, the port's been wonderful to work with. They've reached out to us about that. We've had numerous conversations and continue to offer feedback on that as ideas come up. So honestly, we really do enjoy working with the port and being a tenant here, and contribute to the community and as a whole.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys being open to, having the public to see what you guys do and to be an inclusive part of the community. Keep us in the loop as you look at the future and what your building performance opportunities and needs are as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for having me here today to explain a little bit about what's going on.
So Ron, tonnage and width of your biggest vessel you think you're going to build in the future?
Well, the biggest boat, it probably isn't the weight that's the problem. I mean, we can build a boat about 150 feet long by about 45 feet wide. An aluminum vessel.
The reason I'm asking that is we're considering a lift in the
Yeah.
ASB plan.
Yeah, typically it would be the size, the beam of the lift, not the weight. The aluminum boats that we build, generally aren't an issue that way at all for any of the travel lifts out there. They're not that heavy, but it's the width of the pit that would be a constraint that way, and the width of the travel lift that would be a potential constraint.
Building they slide in and out this way.
Correct.
So that for reference for us for what we may or may not do in the future, it's that 45 foot's a number we needed to know. But so a 70 or 150 foot vessel you're going to build 300 tons?
I think it would probably be less than that.
So under 300.
Yeah, probably under that. Yeah, I would imagine it would be under that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're not done with me.
Oh, okay.
By the way, first time you've ever called me Mr. Bell, I kind of like it.
It's the coat you're wearing.
He's got other names. Truly one of our greatest success stories. And when we were able to move you from the old location to the new location, it's truly one of our greatest accomplishments. And I, like Michael, want to echo that we are committed to making sure you have enough room. And it looks to me like your backlog is tremendous. So I just want to make sure there's nothing that we can do, or I want to ask if there's anything we can do to help you process that backlog. And what kind of expansion space are you looking for in the short term? What are you looking for in the long term? And how do we get you there?
Sure. I mean, in the short term, our immediate goal is employees, is to add staff.
What are you at now?
We're about 65 or so now. Our existing facility, we easily could get 80 folks or more, and not be stepping on each other that way, maybe even 90. It wouldn't be a problem. So as we look to expansion and we need to move forward in the future, we'd probably look to go out the other side of the shop and expand the big bay that we have. That's certainly down the road a little bit, something that we aspire to, but we definitely have to get there in terms of staffing first and foremost. We're spending a lot of time working this year, like I said, on recruiting, but we're also working on training. We've got a job skills program grant that we recently executed to try and build an in-house program for our welders and fabricators so we can get more folks that have less experience into the door and up to speed faster that way. That's certainly been a constraint in the whole area right now.
As you imagine, and you folks have probably run into, a lot of skilled trades, there's just a shortage of folks in general that way. We are seeing a little bit more of a swing back. The enrollment at some of the trade schools and programs, the apprentice programs, is definitely picking up as well. So we think we're kind of headed in the right direction that way. But that's probably our current large constraint in the short term before we get to the long term. When we do look at boats and we look at electric boats, we did bid on, and we're in conversations right now with San Francisco Bay Ferry that are building, they're building a fleet of fully electric boats right now, battery-only boats. And so I've had conversations with the port staff too, just to talk about, our future fit-up float, where that might be, and how are we going to charge those boats? Because as we look to the future for boats like that, that's something that could be a little bit of a constraint. We don't necessarily need to fast charge anything because we're not, going back and forth on a ferry run, but we are going to have to charge rather large battery banks at a minimum, like an overnight type scenario, so we can run sea trials and things like that the next day. So that's something that's on our mind that may not have been thought of right out of the gate when we did move to the new facility, was just, extra capacity related to the grid and some of the power charging infrastructure that may be needed in the future.
And you're finding the way that you're launching boats now to be satisfactory?
It's working for us. I think some of the ideas with the ASB could be something that would be workable as well. It'd be more of a commercial area, and also allow us to. Right now, we work around the tide, which is not a problem. It's a lot better for us than it used to be. But yeah, we're definitely waiting for high tide and kind of dark 30 to put boats in the water. That way we're a little bit safer and have fewer onlookers.
Travel lift to pull up to your front door and pick it up and take it down and put it in would be the ideal.
Yeah, it could be. Some of the boats might be too wide to get the travel lift, in the door, depending on how wide they might be. But that we could always use our trailer to do the same thing.
Or you could put rails in so you could roll them out when they're done.
True.
That was diplomatic. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, speaking of apprenticeships, just one quick question. Your skill set that you're most desiring right now, is it still welders?
Yeah, definitely. The welders, in our current setup, and probably as we go forward, about half of our production staff are welders. Mm-hmm. And then the other ones are different tradesmen, whether it's, carpenters, electricians, systems, or coatings. But we get to a point where literally half of our staff will continue to be welders. So that's the biggest
that's your pinch point.
Demand. Once we get that filled, we can start to kind of ramp up other departments as well. But we've got to do that first.
Thanks. All right, Sierra.
All right. Is this working? Oh, I can hear myself. Yes. Hi, I'm Sierra Oliver. I'm the program director of the Northwest Maritime Apprenticeship Program. And so last year, actually around this time, we had done a pretty big introduction into our apprenticeship program done by my colleague, Deb Granger. So today I'm here to give you an update since it's been a whole year. A little bit of background on the apprenticeship program. We launched in October 2022, and we are a fully registered state apprenticeship program training marine service technicians. So we are a 4-year program and a 6,000 on-the-job training hour program. As a marine service technician, we are training people every part of the boat. So we do comprehensive vessel instruction. So that's anything from the lofting, designing, and building of boats, all the way to end of life, marine salvaging, and everything in between. So I call it, we are teaching people how to build boats, make them float, make them go, and sometimes make them look nice, depending on the boat. And so as a fully registered apprenticeship, the apprenticeship model is combining on-the-job training hours also with classroom instruction. So all of our apprentices had either gained employment or had employment to be in this apprenticeship program. So they're all actively working in the industry. And so we have officially launched our 3rd year of the program this past September. And first thing I want to say before we get into the updates is We are very gracious of the support that the Port of Bellingham gives us in helping us develop, expand, and sustain our program. So first, I want to thank all of you for that. And going into the updates about the program, I have this nice little fact sheet that I had built for all of you. So first thing with launching the third year of the program, when we first started this program, we ended our first year with 6 apprentices. Now we're up to 16 apprentices. So we have 8 apprentices in level 1, 4 apprentices in level 2, and 4 apprentices in level 3. Because we are a 4-year program, all of our classes run in the evening. So it's 1 evening a week and then 1 Saturday a month from September to April. We have 3 cohorts running right now, so that's 3 evenings a week for me and 3 Saturdays a week for me, so I am very busy. But this is very exciting for us to grow so drastically in just a couple of years. Moving on from that, because all of our apprentices are working in the industry, they're working for companies that are in the industry. Originally, when we had started, we had 2 training agents. That's what the state calls them. We call them employer sponsors that are partnered with us. That was Northwest Diesel Power and Northwest Explorations. Since then, we have grown to include 11 employer sponsors in Whatcom and Skagit County. Originally, we had just started in Whatcom County, so we have grown quite drastically from that. So all of these companies here have someone that's currently in the program. We have also, this past year, been approved to partner with employers in 5 counties. So that's Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, Island, and San Juan County. So because we are considered a joint employer apprenticeship, any marine service company, and as you know, that's very broad, can become partnered with us and put someone in this program. And the fascinating thing about our program is that in the higher levels, all the apprentices can specialize in a specific skill. So they get this broad overview of a boat, anything from metal fabrication, from composite work, to safety, to business procedures, to paint, underwater coatings, electrical, and how all the systems work together. So they get this broad overview, but actually at their place of work, they can specialize in specific skills. And that's actually required to complete our program. At the same time, they're earning their on-the-job training hours, working with a mentor or a supervisor at their place of work. So what we're doing in the classroom is supplemental to what they're doing at their place of work. About 10 to 20% of the training is actually in the class. The rest of it is on the job. As you know, not everyone learns well from just reading out of a textbook. My favorite part about this program is the number of instructors that we have teaching our classes. So I'm not an expert in these fields, but what we do is we partner or contract with local professionals that are experts locally in this area that come and teach our classes. So in your little packet, I put all of our schedules from level 1, level 2, and level 3. So each week is a different unit. So I have 27 subject matter experts that are all locally here in Whatcom County that will teach these classes. So they come in, and they're also usually working full-time jobs, and they'll come in the evenings and teach these classes. So as an apprentice, not only do you have this robust training program, but you're learning from professionals and you're building a network. So you may be specializing in this, but you have someone that you could go to for, other issues that you may be working on, whether you're diagnosing an issue, repairing an issue, or building something. That segues into the different marine subjects that we teach. Like I said, we have 27 subject matter experts that will come in and teach all of our classes. We also recently received a grant to build a pre-apprenticeship program. And so what this is, it's basically a pathway into an apprenticeship program. So our pre-apprenticeship program, we're calling it Buoyant Beginnings. Believe it or not, Deb did not make that up. If you all know her, she likes her names. And what it is, it's going to be targeting 16 to 29-year-olds that are unemployed, precariously employed, or underemployed. So that would include, temp jobs or anything like that, and high school students, so 16 and 29-year-olds. And what it is, it's a 6-week summer course where they're learning employability skills, and they're also learning marine trade skills. and includes a 2-week internship or job shadow at a local marine service company. With the idea is when they complete a pre-apprenticeship program like that, they can be hired on potentially at the company that they had job shadowed with and then start the apprenticeship program in the fall. And the exciting thing about this is we're doing it in partnership with Lummi Nation. So we earned our grant. We actually just found out about it last month, so we're in the process of that to launch it next summer. And so we will be targeting a lot of high schools, and we're going to be running a tribal and a non-tribal cohort to run that. And I think, what else did I have? I think that's all I had in terms of updates. A lot's been happening. Any questions?
Mr. Shepherd?
Very exciting. It segues perfectly with our previous presentation and just the need for skilled employment in this area. And we're just really pleased to see this come into fruition. And I mean, it's just exceeding any expectations that I had for what this could have been. So good work. You mentioned you have capacity for or approval for providing services in 5 counties. Does this same program exist in other counties in Washington State, or are we providing a unique program here?
This is very unique. So we actually adopted this curriculum from the Quadrant Marine Institute, which is in Sydney, BC, and they've been running this for 30 years. And so we were able to adopt it and adapt it to this area. And from my research, there's no other program like this in the U.S. And I have done a lot of research about registered apprenticeships training marine service technicians that are joint employers. So there are other marine apprenticeships out there like Dakota Creek Industries and Nichols Brothers Boat Builders, but those are employer specific. We're the only ones that I know of that's open to employers in those counties. And our goal is to go statewide eventually. I've actually had a lot of interest from companies in Port Townsend who are pushing a lot for something like this to come to Port Townsend to be able to serve those counties over there. But right now, this is very unique to our area.
So for the current model students, if they're in any of those 5 counties, they're coming here for physical classes, or is this a hybrid kind of remote experience?
So the evening classes can be done in a hybrid model. So that way we have equitable access for everyone in those 5 counties because Edmonds is very far away. But it's still considered in Snohomish County, so anyone that's working for a company down there can be put into this apprenticeship program. So our evening or weekly classes can be done in a hybrid setting. Our Saturday workshops, which is once a month, are done in person because they're hands-on. It's hard to do that through a computer.
Sure.
We have different funding sources to be able to provide wraparound services such as travel expenses for people that do come a long ways for the weekly or for the monthly classes.
Okay. So if this continues to expand, you may need other weekend site locations.
Yes, so that is, if I were to go 2, 3, 5-year plan, would be in a perfect world, because we all live in one, right? My ideal would be multiple satellite campuses across Washington State.
Very good. Okay.
All stemming from Bellingham.
Mr. Briscoe?
Yeah, let's see, I had written down here, you're going to enhance the program, and you answered that question very well. How many people that are unemployed would you be interested in, or are you planning to take into the program? I'm sure there's a fixed number you can get to, correct?
Are you talking about the pre-apprenticeship or the apprenticeship?
The buoyancy.
The buoyant beginning? So that's a great question. So we had written for 2 20-person cohorts. So being able to facilitate 40 people.
Okay. So we had a program here once, and it's needed again. And it was when I was in high school. Dan, this pertains to you guys as well. At Bellingham Technical College, they had their own boat. They called it the Bell Tech. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not. It was about a 45-foot fiberglass boat. They could power block and they could drum seine. They held 2 different types of classes for training crew members. Our commercial industry here in Whatcom County was rated #2 behind Peace Health in 2016, wasn't it, Rob? that was done. And through all this, I don't see anything to help the commercial industry other than wire their boat and fix the engine. And all that's great, but you can't operate that vessel without people on the back deck. So is there anything on the horizon or the near future to try and implement a program like that again? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you could get a boat without having to buy one and somebody to volunteer to run it and teach. Because we have a fleet that part of them couldn't go to Alaska this year because they couldn't come up with qualified people to put on the back deck. And it's not just here, it's Seattle, it's Everett, it's Tacoma, it's Alaska, it's everywhere. You know, this was a program you took right out of high school, it was a class out of high school, and you went over to Bellingham Tech. You went to class 3 days a week over there, and the other 2 days a week you spent on the water for a couple hours, learning how to work on the back deck of vessel. And I see it's a big hole we're leaving here.
It is,
You
it
know, I
is,
mean,
and there's less training
It's great we
opportunities
can fix
out
boats,
there.
but we need to be, so anybody thinking about that?
We're constantly thinking about that. So underneath the Working Waterfront Foundation organization, which is a nonprofit organization, is we can have multiple different programmings. And this is something that Dan and I from across the room, if anybody has ever come in and see our classroom, are constantly talking about. And there's a couple of different ways that we go about this. Nothing concrete and in motion right now is, do we develop something or do we partner with an organization that we can bring to Bellingham that would be under the foundation umbrella organization? So there is a lot of talks, because I get this question a lot, especially when people come in and they ask me, you know, they come in asking me about the apprenticeship program. And a lot of time they're from outside the marine industry trade. And so the first thing I ask them, okay, you're interested in maritime, but what does that mean, right? Are you interested in working on boats? Are you interested in like the vessel operation side of it? So that's usually my first step when I'm having this conversation with someone. And that's one that comes up a lot. And from what I know, we don't have anything here. No. And so.
Compass just closed down in Edmond, so.
Which one?
Compass is no longer, so they were one of the big powerhouses of maritime training for a while.
Right. So there's talks about it, and we can look more in depth into it, but it is something that does constantly, we hear a lot
If you'd
about.
like to learn more about it, I could explain how the whole program went. I
Yeah.
mean, how it worked and what they did.
We'd love for you to stop by and chat with us about it.
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to come to our classroom and see our facility, I highly invite you to, Rob has come down, I highly invite you to come down and see it, and we're always happy to talk, and we want to do what's best for our industry here and our workforce here, so.
And the teacher was Bob Funkhauser. He was a shop teacher at Seaholm High School. He was also a fisherman. He fished in Kodiak, Alaska in the summertime. So in the wintertime, he taught the mariners course, how to read a chart, how to plot a course, how to use the electronics. He taught that in school. There was a class in the classroom for that. It was separate from the fishing class. So, I mean, I think it's some of the things that we need to try and get back.
And we do have a few people that are currently in the apprenticeship program who do fish during the summer. So being able to bring on a program like that where we can train someone to be a crew member.
And that was my other question. I see that they're working at shops all around town, but if a young man has a job fishing in the summertime, I guess that does qualify him for being in your apprenticeship program, or does he have to be working at a shop?
So because it's a 6,000-hour program, there is no stated amount of time how long it takes to get the 6,000 hours.
Right.
So if someone fishes in the summer, those hours don't count because they're not actively doing marine service work. But because this program, at least the classroom portion, takes 4 years, reaching 6,000 hours does not take that long. If you're talking about 2,000 hours a year is full-time. But someone that's even working just part-time can still, once they reach their 6,000 hours, they're eligible to get their journey level certificate. But there's no time limit to that.
All right. I'll have to come over and talk.
Yeah, we'd love to talk.
All right, thank you. Otherwise, I think it's a great program. It's very helpful for everybody, for our businesses in town, as well as giving young people direction. I think it's great.
I've also feel like I've noticed a big shift in our, just culture of learning, because I'll host these instructor training sessions, and we'll have 17 or 20 different instructors from all different businesses that come in, and you can see just how passionate they are about teaching. And a lot of them come up to me and they're like, I'm not a teacher, or I'm not an instructor. And I'm like, yes, you are. We're all teachers here. But they do get a lot of support, and I definitely have noticed a huge difference. And the people that are passionate about this, where I can just walk down the dock and see 6 of my instructors and ask them what they're working on. It's pretty incredible, actually.
So mine is a little broader than this, because I see a disconnect between what Ron needs and what you're providing from an apprenticeship standpoint. Mm-hmm. Has the waterfront done a survey to find out what jobs are immediately necessary? Where is the demand that we can fill with high-paying jobs that we can start to work on apprenticeship programs for? So if you expanded the program, say, into welding, I guarantee you they'd find a place to work. Mm-hmm. The supply and demand of welders right now is off the chart. And
Right.
I know what you're paying to get welders, but and you're not set up for that. I understand that, but that's still the maritime industry, right? And it's still our waterfront, and it's still jobs on the waterfront. So are there any efforts being made to expand beyond where you are now into those kind of more manufacturing apprenticeships?
Right. So when this apprenticeship was originally launched, part of the reason why it was launched is because the coalition had surveyed their members, and they're, what's the biggest need is we need trained workers, and no one can find those apparently. But when this was originally launched, so to be approved by so all apprenticeships are governed by L&I, and they actually have to go through this extensive approval process for our program standards that are approved. So we're kind of locked into those program standards, but they can be modified. So every apprenticeship has what's called an apprenticeship committee. And so these are companies, employers and employees of companies that are current training agents that are part of that committee, and they make decisions on the committee. So when they have so we meet 4 times a year on that, and so part of that is there anything that needs to be changed? So a lot of that comes from industry on what needs to be modified to reach the needs of our industry. However, because we're not set up, we do a little bit of welding in our program, but that's the thing, we're not a welding program. However, it doesn't mean we couldn't be or potentially launch a program that could be underneath the
I'm just using welding as one example.
Right, yeah, I understand.
I mean, there's
yes.
many examples where there's immediate jobs available.
Mm-hmm. Right, and through the apprenticeship program, because we're doing this broad
Like I said,
overview.
it's not just welding, it's across the board.
The problem with a welding apprentice, especially for mine, you have a pretty good welder, you can't just come in and practice. I want to ask you a question, is Bellingham Tech, are you getting very many people out of Bellingham Tech, is that?
So that's a question to Ron. Ron, could you go to the mic if you're going to answer that?
I'm just trying to, I mean, if Bellingham Tech could
Sure,
upgrade.
we're trying to work with all the different programs around, and yes, we are getting folks from Bellingham Tech, and we have a really good relationship with them. We're building a relationship with these folks. I think, we see needs across the board. They're trying to fill a broader spectrum, from our conversations, but the needs they're far and wide. But we're doing good that way, and continue to work on all sorts of programs, this one and Bellingham Tech.
Okay, that's.
The stuff, the equipment needed for these, come up with the equipment needed for that type of apprenticeship.
Whole different safety level too, I
And
guess.
spendy, very spendy.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing more.
No, I think they're doing great.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
So before we move to action items, I'm going to have to go get rid of some coffee. So I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break. Can we reconvene here at, let's just say.
What if we say no?
So at 5:40. if you don't mind. Thank you.
We've been over
Apparently, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm going to call us back to order. Again, we're Board of Commission meeting for Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and we're going to move to our action items. First action item, stockpile agreement. Legal counsel, Holly.
Just say, yeah, okay, we're done.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Holly Stafford, Port General Counsel from CSD Attorneys at Law. Before you, for your consideration this evening, is a stockpile and material removal and arbitration agreement with Harcourt. Just by way of background, we've had a couple of false starts on this one, and so shout out goes to Rob and to Brian for working really hard with Harcourt to get this in the shape that it's in today. As you know, the Port and Harcourt have had a number of disputes related to Harcourt and the Port's position that it's failed to perform under the restated MDA in the waterfront district. The Port has had two big concerns as these disputes have been working their way through. One is how to get certainty that Harcourt will remove its stockpiles of material from the Port's board mill property. So this stockpile material is presumed to be contaminated, was excavated from Harcourt's property that it owns. And then the second big issue is that the parties have not been in agreement over the scope of what needs to be arbitrated. So we've got some issues that need to be arbitrated through dispute resolution process, and we've got some that can go through the courts. And so this agreement resolves both of those issues and puts a halt on the litigation, providing a mechanism to ultimately resolve the default issue. So what this agreement does is a few things. One, Harcourt is required to remove its stockpile within 12 months of full execution of this agreement. There'll be a minimum volume, an averaged minimum volume per week that they need to remove to make sure that they stay on task. The second, only the restated MDA default will be arbitrated, and there's a timeline within this agreement for when that arbitration will occur. So we would have essentially 10 days from today to choose an arbitrator from JAMS. The arbitration would be completed February 14th, 2025. Three, litigation between the parties will be paused, saving everyone attorney's fees. And what that means is that Harcourt will dismiss its appeals. It filed 2 appeals with the Washington State Court of Appeals. Both of those will be dismissed. Those will be done. The Port's temporary restraining order that it currently has against Harcourt will be converted into a preliminary restraining order without the need to go back to court for that at all, other than a stipulated order. And the third piece of that litigation hold is that all of the parties' claims will be stayed at the Superior Court level pending the outcome of arbitration. And in exchange for this, Harcourt will be provided access to Port property to continue to construct its Building 2 project. So it's nothing new. It's the Building 2 project, which consists of buildings A, B, and C. And so that is really in a nutshell what this agreement will do. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the agreement itself, the process, or where we are with Harcourt.
Commissioner Briscoe.
No, I have no questions. I understand what we're doing. Thank you, Holly.
Mr. Shepard.
Yeah, how do we've had agreements in the past, and we've seen a consistent pattern of them not being fulfilled by this partner. Do we have any greater level of assurance that we're going to see this agreement adhered to?
I am not usually optimistic, as you know, but I am optimistic about this one. Because we have a bit of a stick as opposed to a carrot. So in this circumstance, if they violate the agreement, if they, for example, they don't remove the average amount of material that they are required to remove.
For the record, what is that?
250 tons per week, I believe, Brian. So if they say they fail to do that, what we can do is terminate this agreement, and then they no longer have access. That is why we're having the temporary restraining order converted to a preliminary injunction. And for the time being, any activities that fall within this agreement will not be considered a violation of that. We also have a carve out in the litigation stay. So if we need to go into court to say, Your Honor, we have a preliminary injunction, they violated this agreement, it's been terminated, they have no access, we can go ahead and do that. So I hope that answers your question in the most lawyerly way possible, that if Harcourt does not comply with the terms of the agreement, we have an immediate mechanism that we can deploy here, and they will no longer have access to construct their Building C.
So they could still get into their property to do things if they need to, but it's easier to access through ours, correct?
Correct. They can access their property through granary. They have actually using their current parking garage through the entrance off granary, which does not cross our property. But from bringing in oversized equipment and the majority of the stuff they're doing, they need access to our property, including the crane to build their third Building C.
But I just wanted to make it clear that they do have access to their property, through their property.
Absolutely.
They just need a little more through ours.
It's more convenient for them to do their construction with our property, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I just continue to be baffled that we're still having discussion about the defaults having merit and accuracy when we see them all around us today. We have one that we're agreeing to remove a stockpile that is part of a previous default claim. I mean, so we all know it's there, but it's still this subject of consternation and question. The buildings were supposed to be done a year ago. They're not going to be done this October either. So.
Right, and these were all grounds for default back about a year ago. And that's one of the reasons for this agreement, is because it puts the argument about what we're even arguing about to bed, and we all have a box to put the dispute in, so we can go to arbitration and say, here is the issue, the narrow issue, not all of these other kind of sideshow issues that have been brought up.
Well, I appreciate your work on this. Thank you for helping us get to this point.
No, I think everybody's got the same goal. We want those things built. We want them done in timely fashion. And thank you for Rob, Brian, for coming to a conclusion on this. I'm hoping this is the conclusion of this. That's all. Thank you. Action item, please, Carrie.
All right. Motion to approve stockpile and material removal and arbitration agreement with Harcourt Development Residential Bellingham LLC, Harcourt Developments Construction LLC, and Harcourt Bellingham LLC.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I want the stockpiles gone as much as everybody, but I just have to acknowledge the huge amount of frustration in the community for continuing to be dragged down this path of lawsuits and frivolous actions. So I'm a no.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Excuse me, how do you vote?
No.
Yes.
Need this done. I'm a yes. Action item number 2. Tyler.
Yeah, good evening, Commission. Tyler Schroeder, Director of Economic Development. First contract in front of the Commission, so I get on the action item instead of the consent, so excited about that. Give Commission a little background in regards to the work that we're moving forward with. As I joined the port back in May, a lot of conversation was going on with the county and the cities on the comprehensive plan. Through that effort, they're going to be updating it by the end of 2025. The comp plan, as the Commission knows, really looks at population, but it also has a component with employment trends and looking at employment trends for the next 20 years. As there's been a lot of conversation in the community, with the different councils in our community on industrial lands and manufacturing lands associated with it. The report and the study that is being proposed to be done by Mal Foster Alongi will be to answer some questions in regards to industrial trends. The work that we're moving forward with will be able to be coordinated with Whatcom County as it prepares its comp plan for 2025. The study is really going to answer and ask a couple of different questions. What industrial trends will influence how industrial lands are developed throughout Whatcom County? How industrial lands being used in the county and where are they available? Is the supply of industrial lands adequate to accommodate the anticipated demand for growth? And what infrastructure investments must be prioritized to support pad-ready or shovel-ready development sites in Whatcom County? And then lastly, if the demand is shown to be there and the lands are not available, it'll identify some potential areas for available rezoning or to discuss the opportunities for support of expanding industrial lands in Whatcom County and the 7 cities associated with it. This study is really kind of being done with the port hat of the county's Associate Economic Development Organization, the ADO, and really looking forward to working with MFA on the study and then coordinating with the cities and the county planners and the Whatcom County Business and Commerce Committee in regards to the deliverables that come out of this so that we can anticipate the correct amount of industrial lands and manufacturing lands for the comp plan process in 2025.
Commissioner Shepard, let's go.
Sure. We've talked a lot about industrial lands. I think we all see benefits and importance here. I always tell people, you know, we have some lands that we can build vertically on, and industrial lands are usually don't fit that criteria. It's hard to build density up for most of these industrial uses. My questions are, how does this study differ from other studies that we've done? I know I've heard about buildable land surveys, I-5 studies, other GIS mapping projects. Have those not adequately addressed this question? We are under budget pressure, just like lots of other organizations, and trying to figure out how this expenditure dovetails with any of these previous things that we've looked at.
Yeah, it's a great question, Commissioner. It actually builds off of that work. So there was the I-5 infrastructure analysis that happened, I think, 2018 or 2019. And then in 2023, the port also worked with MFA in regards to expanding that beyond just I-5 to the other cities, and then wrapped in some brownfield work, so identifying some brownfield locations based off of a grant from Department of Ecology. What this is looking to do is to take that information and provide guidance into the comp plan process. So the comp plan process will truly identify, will try to identify how the industrial lands are currently being utilized and what the demand and growth will look like for the next 20 years. But I think more specifically, it's going to identify areas in our community where industrial and manufacturing lands are appropriately located, and how those lands can be zoned to be able to attract and grow the existing businesses that we have here. A lot of the work, and it'll give some recommendations associated with that.
And maybe my follow-up is this sounds like a really good project for something like a commerce grant. We've been successful getting other commerce grants for planning studies. Why is it a budget request for us and not a, have we already pursued grant opportunities for this? Are we under a time crunch for this comp plan that's coming up, or this just feels grantable to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would tend to agree that you could probably find a Department of Commerce grant associated with this work. I would acknowledge that there is a time crunch. The comp plan process that the county and city have started is already being developed. There's already a lot of conversation in regards to housing the electeds are having conversations between the city and the county to provide some input into it. And so I believe it's needed to be able to move forward so that we don't lose that opportunity. And the work being done by the end of this year to the first quarter of next year, that's the timing to be able to provide guidance into the comp plan. So I acknowledge that it could be work that could be accomplished from a commerce grant, but the expenditure will be, I believe, very valuable for the comp plan process and for identifying industrial lands to be able to do economic development, grow our existing businesses, recruit businesses from outside of our area to our location. Because right now, I think everybody tends to agree there are no industrial lands available for development, or very little. And so the idea here is to do that coordination with the cities and the county, who are the ones that are making the decisions in regards to land availability and zoning, and then to be also identify what type of growth scenarios we'll like to see in manufacture. The comment on the grant is acknowledged. It could be maybe available for grants, but the timing, it seems appropriate to move forward with it.
And same comment, would you have the same comment in reference to use of EDI funds for this?
Well, I would say that in one way this is being funded from a portion of EDI. The port's staff through economic development is done through a tri-funder agreement, which is funded by EDI. And we are utilizing our existing budget this year to accomplish this work, which a portion of that is funded through EDI for the tri-funder agreement. Because really the anticipation is that we will be able to use budget laps that our department has to be able to accomplish the execution of this contract.
Okay.
Commissioner Briscoe.
I think you just explained it all. I'm good.
From a 20,000-foot view, this is what we do. And my only, if I'm going to get in the weeds on anything, it's going to be what are we looking at as far as the impacts of residential to industrial in this study? Because as we have seen, they're not compatible. And quite frankly, our job is to protect industrial ground. We are the port. Our job is economic development. So again, from that 20,000-foot view, if we don't do this, we don't do anything. So we've got to protect manufacturing. We've got to protect the workload. So my concern is that the question's always been phrased, you can't put that industry next to housing. How do we mitigate that, and what's going to be done in this study that's going to help us with mitigation or with addressing the impacts of that?
The only thing I'd add to that is, this study is going to be instrumental in going to get grants to build infrastructure in existing industrial lands. I don't want to disagree with Tyler, but we have a lot of industrial lands. They're just not serviced. They lack stormwater, they lack rail, they lack water, they lack electricity. This study will prove that. They'll provide evidence of that. So when we go to get grants, we'll be more successful to providing that infrastructure to our industrial lands.
Yeah, one of the things that we don't have any ability to zone. The port doesn't zone, the port doesn't set neighborhood boundaries, doesn't set city limits. We don't do any of that. And that's all done by outside agencies, and yet we're the ones who take the heat when we try to site something on an industrial piece of ground, which is what we're mandated to do. So I just want to make sure that we're addressing that impact and that we're making it clear that we're not the only players in this game of industrial ground, that there are other parties that need to be involved in the zoning, in the mitigation of those impacts, because they're the ones responsible for putting the housing near the industrial ground, not us. So we pick our head up after putting a piece of industry on a piece of industrial ground. We don't want to have it, we don't want to be slapped because it's too close to residential or the impacts haven't been addressed. That's also part of some other jurisdictions.
Yeah. I've got one more.
That brought up,
It's not- yeah,
I stirred the pot.
Yeah, you did. I get.
Wait a minute, I was stirring the pot first. So you said something that's interesting, and it comes to mind. You got industry there, or home, we can't build industry next to housing. But we could build housing next to industry, is what they've been doing, and then been complaining and shutting down industry or curtailing it. So is that going to be addressed in this comp plan? Are we going to allow more housing built next to our industrial properties, whether they're already, utilized or they're going to be? Are we going to let them build houses there, or is this county and the city going to do something about stopping that and having something in between? I mean, is that what this is going to go to as well?
I mean, the task of this study will be able to understand the labor force, the land needs, and other siting requirements associated with industrial lands. And Commissioner, your point is really valid. There's a lot of discussion in the county council about industrial lands in the Marine Drive area. Those industrial lands have been operated as industrial for decades. And there's been residential zoning surrounding it, and some additional housing units, or people have moved into that area, and that's created a conflict between the two. And so every council member I've talked to with the county and the city really have an interest in talking through that dynamic and ensuring that there's enough industrial lands at the right location for us to continue to see economic growth and economic development. And so that's what this plan is anticipating, to have that conversation and be able to provide some recommendations on where that can go. But it will be a policy conversation for the counties and the cities to make, because it's their authorization through comp plan and GMA. This will just help provide some data and some understanding to the background for that policy consideration. What I think is important as well is, I think this is the first time that I've been around watching the comp plan conversation that economic trends, employment trends are really being asked and answered. It's really usually been housing and population, not employment projections. And as I was talking with Matt Hoffman, who's the project manager at MFA, he's really excited to see this kind of coordination with Port and the county and city, as the Port's the economic development driver, being able to provide input into that comp plan process, and hasn't seen it in many other communities.
Well, I think one of the things that happened is, particularly in the Marine Drive area out here, is most of that housing was built for the industrial places that were there, for their workers early on, way back when, in the 30s and 40s. That was built so they didn't have to commute. It was built to travel. And our times have changed, and those people went away, and some of the industries went away. And now we've got folks that just bought it because it's a home, not because it's where they're going to work. And that part of it got forgot, that's why that housing was there.
And I think, instead of moratoriums in regards to those areas, let's have a policy conversation with the information and the data at hand. And so this is what this study will try to help through that process.
And just one last point. One thing I don't want to see come back is a whole proposal that comes back and tells us, hey, we've got this brilliant idea, let's go put an industrial park out at Cherry Point. Does the group know the local dynamics and the history here of what is and what isn't possible on some parcels?
Yeah, there's stakeholder interviews associated with this effort, and the Cherry Point conversation is acknowledged and will be discussed with the consultant.
Okay, and I guess just we have important strategic relationships with our tribal partners, and so they have to be invited to these stakeholder conversations, especially on parcels that they have really significant concerns about. Their concerns about wetlands and cultural resources haven't changed. They've become more steadfast, if anything. And so having a report that comes back and just has this new idea about this piece of property that's got an HI designation is going to piss me off. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. Necessary now, last comment, is we're seeing a push of industry out of urbanized areas into our region because we are inviting to them. And so I just want to encourage you to proceed down this road. So let's vote. Carrie?
All right. Commission motion authorizing Port of Bellingham Executive Director to execute a contract with Mall Foster Alani, Inc. to conduct a study of industrial lands and employment in Whatcom County.
Commissioner Shepard?
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bell is also a yes. Thank you, Tyler, for the work on this. All right, we're at the end of the scheduled meeting, and we are open to public comment, seeing only staff in the room. Oh, except for Dan.
And John.
Oh, John.
I'll try to make this quick. Dan Tucker, Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. Just wanted to say I appreciate you guys' vote for that analysis. This goes into a comment, Commissioner Bell, that you had said one of the very first meetings I ever came to when you talked about the development of the sub-downtown district and wanting a walkable 2030 plan, not a 2010 plan for that area. And this plays into that same sentiment of having a 2030 idea of how we're going to integrate our zoning, because as this region grows and businesses do get pushed out of urbanized areas, and we are urbanizing, we do need to think about how industry could coexist with housing, because if we are going to maintain that walkable 15, 20-minute city idea, you're going to have these economic opportunities spread evenly throughout the base. And where we have these rail lines and these truck routes that are already federally designated and put in, and infrastructure for power and water and sewer for these massive facilities put in, we do need to maintain that. How do we do it next to the housing? And the discussion that I would like to see with the port and the county and the city is to say, not a moratorium, and agreeing with Tyler there, but how do we create regulations and enforce those regulations and educate and outreach to the public that regulations actually do exist around these things that would help them feel safer and also mitigate all of the risks that those businesses might pose, and prove that we're already mitigating risks. So that's my comment, is just to say that support that study. Thank you for voting to get that done. We look forward to the results.
And it may not even be a regulation, Dan. It may just be a transition zone, a zoning issue, not necessarily a regulation, right? Anyone else online wishing to speak? Raise your hand or forever hold your peace. All right, move on to other business. Commissionership.
All right, a couple things. I wanted to just congratulate everybody who participated and put on Sea Feast. It was fantastic. The weather was great. The food was amazing. What?
Did you participate in the pinball tournament?
I played a lot of pinball.
Did you participate in the pinball tournament, Commissioner Bell? I've got a trophy to give away here, so I'm going to give it to Commissioner Shepard since no one else participated.
I did not.
Okay, so Commissioner Shepard is the winner of the first annual 2024 Port Pinball Tournament.
Thank you. My son and I played a lot of pinball there, and the pinball was very popular. I will just say that. So brilliant idea to include that. Things I really liked that I saw: great turnout. There's fantastic food. There's fantastic participation with Lummi Nation. Lots of sponsor tabling by our community partners, and pinball. Yeah. A couple things I would love to see more of in the future is more of those fishing boat demos. People love that, and it just wasn't happening. And I think we've heard about some of the date complications with some of the fleet being gone before, and I want us to continue having conversations about having as much presence from the fleet and having as many boat tours and demos as we can, because I think people really love that, and I miss seeing that. 2026. Okay. I did see some long lines. That means the event's popular, and so our ability to get more food vendors, I think, would help. The lines were huge in some places, and that just shows how popular it was, and whatever we can do to increase opportunities for people. I did see a particular pinch point in the beer garden, maybe having a couple more stations for credit card swiping would help to move those lines along quicker as well. And then I didn't see a port booth for us. A booth for the port, and
No, we don't. For the past couple of years, we haven't done a booth. We've had a lot of people walking around. I do the boat tours. I narrate those. So we've had a pretty big presence. So it's hard to staff a booth and be present at the same time. We run into a staffing issue.
I figured it puts a demand on staff, and I realize that. I think it would be good for us to staff a booth if we can, just because we're a key sponsor, and you can't, we want people to know. And I think that is accomplished through having some of that tabling and welcoming facilities that are associated. So those are some of my requests, but great event, and people seem to really enjoy being down there. Somebody, I think it was Dan, you brought up a question about a heritage area. Do we know what that costs and what it takes to do that? Have we looked into this before? I'm just kind of curious hearing about it.
I was going to get, Kurt's not here. He would tell you about it. I think it's about
You have to come to the mic.
I think it's about $300 a year for a membership for that for you guys, but I would have to check the website. Kurt would know.
$300 a year.
Yeah.
I would like to learn a little bit more about what that would do for us and how beneficial that is to our organization. So, okay. At our last meeting, we had some conversation about 5 commissioners, and my interest would be for us to put this on an upcoming agenda, hopefully on our next upcoming agenda to have more of a conversation, and then allow us to then vote on this before the end of the year. Regardless of what we decide, I think we should solicit community input through having it on an agenda and have that preceded by before we do an action item, so we can make sure we have a thorough conversation. I'm open to suggestions, but I just want to see it get on an upcoming agenda for us to have that formal conversation.
Yeah, I think I said in the last meeting that it would be on the December.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have one meeting in December, is that correct?
Correct.
December 1?
5th. I don't believe that would qualify as executive discussion. Attorneys are shaking their head no.
Is it
I think I'd like to do it in public anyway.
Is it appropriate to have a hearing prior, or should we wrap this all into one meeting? Is there a preference?
My purpose for going to December was to make sure we had enough time between now and December to have it thoroughly vetted.
Okay.
So whatever requirements.
I have no desire to do this in one meeting. I would like to do a discussion, and then
Great.
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, me too. So
maybe a
maybe the
presentation in November, a second meeting in November presentation.
And then on the December agenda.
Does it qualify as like a hearing? We do hearings on like budgets and other things. Is this the same?
Yeah, you could call it a hearing. You could have it really doesn't matter what you call it, because you have the public comment period that you have available, but calling it a hearing will really send the message to the public, I think, that is a focus for that particular meeting. And so I would recommend calling it a hearing on that issue. And then that way we can figure out if we need to have a different location for that as well.
I will see to it that happens in November and December. Great. And we can call it whatever we want, just don't call it a charrette.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just had one thing. At our last meeting, I know Commissioner Briscoe, you got frustrated and it kind of boiled over, and I think it's totally reasonable to feel frustration. I do feel like it doesn't help our efforts or derails some of them to single out members of the public for criticism from the bench here. And I think that we are better served by inviting more transparency in our government operations, by encouraging people to come to our meetings, to participate, feel welcome, feel able to participate as much as possible. And so that would be my preference going forward, and trying to do what we can to ensure that people feel that our operations are striving for transparency, striving for, meeting the code of conduct that we operate under, and creating an environment that people feel pleased and welcome to come and spend, 2 hours, their most exciting 2 hours of their week, attending one of our meetings. So that's my last other business item for the day. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Shepard, but on the other hand, I don't even think it was about transparency. It was about harassment from a group or a single individual to staff and to our executive director that was uncalled for. So I won't go in, everybody knows what I've said, and I would say it again, and I stand by it, and I don't apologize for it. Everybody has the right to their opinion, and I gave mine. A couple of things. So through the media, we've been told that we did something illegal by hiring a PR firm. I mean, it was right in the Northern Light, which is untrue. Secondly, it interests me that the news media in Whatcom County is intent upon harassing us about trying to get a PR firm to help us have transparency that you just spoke to, Michael, with people so they know what's going on. At $100,000, when you look at the city of Bellingham that spends annually $1.47 million on public relations, and we are going to spend $100,000, and we're in the news media being chastised for it. It interests me how that works. Secondly, a gentleman wrote an email to me, and I think it went to other people too, if I read the CC correctly, that I've been intoxicated at the last 2 meetings. And that's why I said what I said, which is interesting considering I haven't drank since 1989 and I've been sober since then. And anybody that knows me knows that. So I wanted to crush that fallacy that I'm drunk at meetings. I'm not drunk at meetings, I don't drink. Thirdly, Councilman Donovan wrote an email to us stating that my fellow commissioners and the executive director, Vick, should have stopped me from saying what I said the other night or done something about me. Well, in his words, I was losing my shit, which I wasn't. I was stating an opinion, and yes, I was emotional about it because I'm sick and tired of that kind of stuff. We have better things to deal with at the port than harassment like that. And I wish, Councilman Donovan, that you would use less F words in your emails to people, especially when you're chastising me about being that way. And I did not do that. I didn't use foul language. And fourthly, I guess, Michael Lilliquist was here, and I wish he was still here because I like to dispute what he said about transparency. With 3 commissioners, you have complete transparency, and I disagree with what Commissioner Shepard said at our last meeting, and I didn't have time to refute it then. You look at 5 commissions and 7 commissions around the state, yeah, they work, and they're totally politicized. It's one party or the other has control, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. We're supposed to be here working for everybody in the county, regardless of their party. We're supposed to be working for the people. You look at the county council, it's politicized. You look at Bellingham City Council, it's politicized. How many people are on it? This is what I would have said to Mr. Lilliquist if he was still here. Everything is politicized. You look at this commission right here, it's not politicized. We're working for everybody. That's why we're getting things done. You can't make everybody happy all the time. It's never going to happen. It's impossible. It's because everybody has different opinions. What we try to do here is come up with an opinion and do something that's best for the majority of the people in the area we're dealing with. Like I said, you can't make everybody happy, but it's always the unhappy voices we seem to hear. Very rarely do we hear the voices that are happy about what we're doing because they're content and they're busy. So we're trying to do the job we're mandated to do. I have the right to freedom of speech and my opinion, and I will put it out there when I want to. That's who I am. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And I have nothing. Meeting adjourned.